Hey guys, my name is Bahroz. I'm a career coach and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will share with you the exact questions that you can expect to be asked in an Amazon interview, and hence it's a must that you prepare for these questions. I will not only share with you the exact questions but also explain as to how you can go about acing them. The reason I have command on this subject is because I have coached numerous candidates who have successfully landed a job at Amazon, most of who share back with me the details of hiring process, including what was asked in the interview and so on and so forth. By the way, in case you are interested in a one-to-one live coaching interview skill session with me, you can book a session with me using the link that I will leave in the description of this video. If you are curious as to what I cover in the session, you can check out a recorded session that I had with one of my students. I will leave the link of that session somewhere here. Now, going back to Amazon. Note that Amazon has 16 leadership principles, and as part of their hiring process, including the interview, they are qualifying you on basis of those leadership principles. I have made a separate video on Amazon leadership principles, so I highly recommend you check that one out as a first step in your interview and hiring process preparation. However, in an interview, they would not be asking you questions pertaining to all 16 leadership principles. Rather, they will only qualify you on limited leadership principles that are most relevant for the role, because they only have 1 hour in the interview. They can't ask you about 16 leadership principles. They will only ask you about some of the leadership principles which are relevant to the role. So for this, I have made a separate video where I explain how you can find out which leadership principles are most relevant for the role that you are applying for. I will leave the link of that video here so you can check it out as well. The exact interview questions that I will share in this video pertain to the leadership principle are write a lot. I will make separate videos for each of the 16 leadership principles. What you need to do is go through the playlist on my channel for Amazon hiring process and check the videos for the leadership principles that are most relevant for the job that you are applying for. Note, the reason I use the word exact, that is exact questions, is because at Amazon, the interviewers follow a standard interviewing template. Whenever there is an interview, the interviewer is provided with a booklet that has a set of questions to be used as a guideline. However, since most of the interviewers are lazy, they end up asking the exact same questions which are written in the guideline. So for someone like me who coaches and talks to numerous candidates on daily basis, it's possible to know what are the standard Amazon interview questions. Now, before we go into the questions and explanation of how to ace them, I have one important ask of you. That is, in case you find any value from this video, please do press the like button, as this keeps me motivated and helps me improve the quality and quantity of content that I post on this channel. And secondly, subscribe to the channel as well, because on this channel, I post content pertaining to how you can achieve career success and success with your financials, personal finance. So if any of these topics are of interest to you, make sure you also subscribe to the channel. Now note, these are behavioral interview questions, and I have here 7 questions to share with you, all of which are getting to the same point, that is to gauge you whether you qualified on the leadership principle or write a lot. On tips to ace behavioral interview questions, I have made a separate video which I recommend you check out as well. Now let's get rolling into the first question. Now here the first question that you can expect to be asked is, tell me about a time when you didn't have enough data to make the right decisions. What did you do? What path did you take? Did the decision turn out to be correct one or not? Now here, as part of the behavioral interview questions, you have to go back in your work experience and see what example in your past experience can answer this particular question. When was the time when you were able to make a decision without having enough data? Now, when you go back into your past experience, things that you need to work on or things that you need to talk about and share here is, how did you go about breaking down the decision? Like identifying the key components of the decisions and what is known versus what was unknown, because this kind of helps you focus on the critical area. So you want to talk about that. Second is used past experience or similar situations, like anytime you were able to leverage the knowledge you have from past experience and made use of that in deciding where and how you want to decide. Relying on expert opinions. This could be another one where you, in your past experience, since you didn't have the information and the data, but you relied on the experts who were there. So for instance, if there was a decision related to finances, you would rely on the finance individual in your particular team. Similarly, another approach that you can make use of is saying, While the data was limited, I also tested out in a small capacity, like a minimal viable product, create a very small, basic kind of a prototype or a sample intervention, and then try whether it was working or not on a smaller scale. Because when you don't have data, that is another way where you can decide as well. Or make use of scenario planning. So sometime or in your history or in your past experience where you made use of different scenarios. So this is one option we can use. This is the second option we can use. And then assign probabilities. What is the probability of one over the other? Another option could be doing scenario planning, which is coming up with different outputs or different ideas because you don't have the complete data, but then doing a pros and cons analysis for each of the solutions that you have, and doing a probability in terms of what may be the most accurate or the best option available based on different probabilities or different sensitivity scenarios. So probability and sensitivity scenario or analysis for different scenarios that you may have. Also see if there was a way you were able to make a decision which was reversible. So as I said before, try it out. If it's not working, reverse it. Then another could be just trusting your intuition, which is going back and saying, historically, I've been in similar situations. In this time around, I didn't have data, so I relied on my intuition or my previous experience. And then, basis that, I decided what I had to decide. Last but not the least, make sure you also talk about how you were focused on the core objective. So even when the data was not available, all the actions that you were taking or all the recommendations you were coming with were something that would deliver on the objective of the project or the vision of the company or objectives of the company. So at the end of the day, even with limited access to the data, you are able to still go with an option which delivers on the objectives of the company or the strategy of the company or the strategy or objectives of that particular project. Hey, one important call out here. As part of Amazon hiring process, you may also have to sit for an Amazon assessment test. The best way to ace that test is to learn the hacks, for which I have made a separate video, but more importantly to practice those questions, sample questions and sample practice test. For this purpose, I sifted through the web and found this one website that has sample practice questions and tests that mimics the original test. I highly recommend you check them out as part of your preparation. Now, the second question that I have is also similar to the question one. And again, here the idea is that the interviewer won't be asking you multiple questions out of the same leadership principle. For each leadership principle, there will be one question. So either it will be question one or question two or any of the 7 questions that I will be sharing in this particular video. All of the questions will be getting to the same point and will be asking the kind of almost the same question, but it's important for you to be familiar with them. So hence it is important you go through the entire video. Now, the second question I have is, tell me about a strategic decision you had to make without clear data or benchmarks. How did you make your final decision? What alternatives did you consider, and what were the trade-offs that you made, and how did you mitigate the risk? Again, here rely on your past experience, seeing when was the last time you had limited access to information and you were making a strategic decision. So here, what you need to talk about is how did you define the objectives very clearly? Like, these are the objectives of the task of the project, because even when the data is not available, you know that this is the guardrail or these are the guardrails you have. Again, as I talked previously, leverage expert opinion. So if there is an expert in that area, let's say if it's a sales related issue or challenge, then you go to the sales individual. If it's a marketing related challenge, then you go and seek help from the marketing expert in the company. What you can do otherwise is also talk about if you were able to use some proxy data. So you were working on a particular category, and however there was a similar category or a different category which had a similar issue. So a different category which has a similar issue, and you kind of use the information or the data that particular category used and use it as a proxy data. As I talked before, which is talk about how you did scenario planning. So you came up with multiple scenarios and what were the pros and cons of different scenarios. Again, talking about how you tested on a small scale, and only then if it worked, you were like, this is working and we can expand it and make it bigger, relying on your past experience as well. Again, similar to what I talked before. And another thing that you can talk about is how did you collaborate with the stakeholders? So making sure that everyone is involved in the decision. It's not just you making the decision alone, because data is already limited. It's a strategic decision that needs to be made. Hence, it's best to involve everyone who is around you to make sure they are involved. They are part of the decision making as well, versus it coming from you alone and you are only the person deciding without consulting or taking opinions from other. How do you go about mitigating risk, or how did you go about mitigating risk? So if there was risk, which there would be because you don't have access to complete data, how do you mitigate risk if something bad or rough happens? What recourse do you have? How do you pull back? Another thing that you would want to talk about, how you were reviewing the results on regular basis. Could be a weekly stand-up meeting where you would be reviewing the results and saying what is going on and then adjusting accordingly. So if there is anything which is going wrong, you already have the mitigation plan and then you adjust accordingly. And last but not the least, it would be also important to talk about how you communicate clearly, especially when there is limited information or data. It is important that everyone is on the same page, so you communicate very clearly to everyone. The third question could be framed like, tell me about a time when you made a difficult decision with input from many different sources. Could be customers, stakeholders, partner teams. What was the situation and how did you arrive at your decision? Did the decision turn out to be the correct one, and why not? Again, as I said previously, clarify the objectives. What is that we are trying to achieve? Because you have multiple sources of information, multiple sources of data. You want to sift through the ones which are most relevant to you, and that will only be possible if you have very clearly defined objectives. So whatever example you pick from your past experience, think how you were able to clarify the objectives first in that particular example. Then categorize and prioritize. So whatever information you were getting, did you prioritize them? Did you categorize them in which is important, which is least important, which one should we focus on, which one should be least focused on? What is the impact of each of the input that is coming in? What is the feasibility that does that input even make sense? Is it also feasible to apply that particular input and make use of it or not? And what is the impact of that input? If the impact of that input is major, yes, we should consider it. If not, we should not consider it. So again, when you think of the past experience, past examples, think how you were able to categorize, prioritize based on feasibility and impact. Also identifying common themes. So if you're getting information from one source and it's a similar information coming from second source and the third source as well, that means that information that you're getting is up and right and very tight and maybe very important as well. So making sure that you have common themes called out as well with regards to all the information that you're seeking. Also making trade-offs. So versus making a short-term decision would be very different. Making a long-term decision would be very different. Is there a trade-off between customer satisfaction or business efficiency? Is there a trade-off between innovation or stability that you had to go through? So talk about that. As I talked previously, also would be nice to talk about how you engaged different stakeholders in the dialogue and made them part of the process as well, involve them. Use data to support decisions. So wherever, because in this particular case, it's not saying that you don't have access to data, it's just saying that you are getting multiple data. Source inputs or sources of data are multiple. In that case, talk about how you made use of information and data to guide your decision making and so on and so forth. And once you made the decision, you also talk about how you took ownership of the decision. So you did a follow through, like as I said previously, having regular meetings, regular connects to understand where we are on the decision we've taken, where we are on the execution, and if there is any course correction which is required. Also make sure there is open communication. People can talk about the project, talk about the task with you, and again, any example where they could also share feedback with you as well. And continuously adjusting whatever information that is coming your way to adjust the project and hence make it better as we go and as you're going through it. The next question I have with me is that we don't always make the right decisions all the time. Tell me about a time when you made a bad decision. What was the impact of that decision? What did you learn? How have you applied that learning in your professional life? Again, here it's important that you acknowledge the decision quickly, that you have made bad decisions. Instead of just saying, no, I've never made a bad decision, it is something which is not possible at all. Everyone make mistakes, everyone make bad decisions. So make sure you admit that yes, there was once a time when you made a bad decision. And then talk about how you assess the consequences. So whatever happened, one, make sure that it's not something which is very consequential, like you didn't destroy the business altogether. It's an example that you pick where part of the decision that you took was right, or part of the execution that you did was right, and part of the decision was wrong. So you kind of salvage part of the project and you let part of the project because of bad decision being harmed. So it's not like everything collapse. So pick on something which is relatively bad but not too bad. So even if you have worse examples, don't go for the worst examples, go for the examples which are not too bad. Here, the idea is not to share the perfect example. The idea is to share that you recognize you made a mistake and what did you learn from it. Then talk about how did you go about assessing the consequences, like what was the impact, what was the impact on your team, let's say, what was the impact on the business, short-term, long-term impact. So you come across as someone who understood not just that they made a mistake, but also understood how do they qualify their mistake and its impact? Then very important is that you talk about from your example that you also were very transparent in communicating that issue that happened and letting everyone know that this has happened, and that you will be someone who will be coming up with solutions for this particular thing. So you're someone who's very transparent, who comes up and shares the problem, but then also comes up with the solution as well, and then immediately implement the corrective action. So talk about how you were so quick and swift at implementing the corrective action so you can fix the mistake that you've done. And then once you've talked about the issue, talked about how you were able to fix it, then talk about what did you learn, because now it's retrospective, right? So the execution has been done, there was a mistake, you fixed it. So you kind of tell the interviewer that you did the damage control and you salvaged the project. But now you have to tell them, what did you learn from that mistake? So were there some issue with the assumption? If there was an issue with an assumption, how do you correct that going forward? So you have to kind of talk in going forward, what did you learn from that particular mistake? And then how did you go about fixing it? For instance, one example could be that you documented whatever happened. So not just you learn from the mistake, but also anyone else who comes and does similar work on the project can also learn from the documentation of the mistake that you've done in past. This is even good because you kind of come across as someone who's owning the mistake. Also seeking input from others, which is okay, the mistake was done, you realize there was a mistake, but also learning from others what could have been done better. So that could be another learning process as well. And then again, coming up with solutions in terms of in future how that can be avoided, or how that particular risk that just took place can be managed. So idea is you tell them what the issue was, how did you fix it, and then quickly what did you learn, and that you documented the learning, and that even today you are making use of that learning to be better at your work and better at your job. Now, as I mentioned previously, I have 7 questions with me which are typically asked in the Amazon interview under our Write a Lot. I have 3 more, but they are very similar to the 4 ones that I previously shared with you, but I'll still talk them out just for you to be familiar, because if you're asked this particular question, you exactly know that they're talking about same decision making, or you write a lot, and this particular leadership principle. So the 5th question I have is, we don't always make the right judgment all the time. Again, similar to the we don't always make the right decision, which was question number 4. So tell me about a time when you made an error in judgment. What was the impact? What did you learn? How have you applied that learning? So as I said previously, here they've just changed the word from decision to judgment, which is similar. So you don't have to change your example. Whatever example you have for Are You Right a Lot, use the same example. Whichever example you use for a bad decision can also be used for a bad judgment. And you can just start by saying, yes, there was once I made a bad judgment, and then you can talk about the same example. So this way you kind of tell them that yes, you are addressing the question because you talked about judgment, so I'm using the word judgment as well. But essentially, I'll give you the answer that I want to give you, where I made a bad decision or bad judgment or made a mistake. What were the things that I did to fix it? And then what were the things that I learned from it, and how am I applying those learnings? So make sure you close the entire loop. Question number 6 that I have with me is, tell me about a time when you discovered that your idea was not the best course of action. What was your idea? Why wasn't your idea the best course of action? How did you find out it was not the best or correct action or best path? What was the best course of action? Who provided it? What did you learn from that particular experience? So here, one element that you may want to add in, because it's kind of similar as well, where you make a bad decision, but here it's more about you chose a bad path, or you discovered that your idea is not right. So it may not have been an execution altogether. It's just that you had an idea, you had a point of view, and maybe everyone else was disagreeing with you, and you were very strong on your idea. So how did you go about changing your mind, and how did you go about convincing yourself that your idea may not be the best idea? So the only difference here versus the previous 2 questions is that this particular thing may not have been implemented. It's just in the idea phase. So here you again talk about how you make sure that everyone is on the same page, like you bring everyone together and hear them out as well. So understand from them what is their idea. Share your idea with them so that they can poke holes in your ideas, and then try to measure or map your ideas versus the objective, which is what is the strategy, what is the objective? Is your idea delivering on the strategy or objective or not? Is someone else's idea delivering on that strategy or objective? Another piece you can talk about is how did you make use of data to qualify whether your idea was good or not, whatever data was available. Another piece you can make use of is how did you make use of the expert opinion. So bring in experts and share your idea with them and ask them to tell you what could have been done different or better, or what is wrong with the idea. Come up with different options. So anytime you came up with different options, so if this idea is not good, maybe we can do it this way, maybe you can do it this way. So these are all the things that you can make use of in your answer while you're delivering this particular answer. Last question I have with me is, describe a time when you brought different perspectives together to solve a problem. What types of different perspectives were represented? How did you seek out different point of view? This is exactly similar to, I think, the second or the third question that I called out, where you had different sources of inputs, different sources of data coming in. Here you're just talking about different perspectives, which again mean different perspectives probably coming from different sources. Again, here you may need to talk about similar things that I talked about, where the information is coming from different sources. Here you have different perspectives. So make sure you have clarity on the objective, because there will be multiple perspectives. Make sure you exactly know what is your objective, what are you trying to deliver, so you can sift through different ideas, different information, and different perspectives that you're getting, and exactly know what will help you deliver on the objective. Categorize and prioritize them. Make sure you know which one is a priority, which one is less priority. Find if there are any common themes. So were you able to find common themes within the different perspectives you were getting? Which perspectives were high impact and had high feasibility as well? Which had low feasibility, like they were not applicable and didn't have high impact either? And again, make sure you engage or you were able to engage different stakeholders into the process as well, so that the decision is not just you making the decision alone. Making use of data. Were you making use of data to make the decision or not? And in the end, as I said, talk about how were you communicating on regular basis, bringing everyone together, sharing the information with them as well, and tracking and adjusting as you go, like on regular basis. Anyways, guys, these were the 7 questions that are typically asked related to are you right a lot leadership principle. As I said before, you won't be asked all these 7 questions. It will be one of them that you will be asked only, and they will use this one particular question to qualify you on this particular leadership skill. In case you found value from this video, I'm sure you'll find value from other videos that I have in my Amazon hiring playlist, where I talk about other leadership principles as well, and what are the different questions that you can be asked around and in those particular leadership questions. You can check out those videos in the playlist. I will leave the link to my playlist somewhere here, so make sure you click and check it out as well. Thank you.